A couple of days ago, I put out my list of the top 10 worst movies of 2025, so now it's time to look at the other side of the coin and honor the top 10 best. Again, this is my opinion. There's a movie on here that you did not like, or there's a movie on here that was not included. Feel free to share yours in the comments and please respect my opinion. Never mind, let's get started. Number 10, Superman. Much like the MCU Spider-Man films, the main character has already been a hero for a while. They know we've seen Superman's origin story over and over, and we're tired of it, so they just skip straight to the action. This is a world that feels very lived in. The people in this world are used to big cities being attacked on a regular basis. The action here is, in the best way, very comic booky, feeling like a live-action cartoon without going too far with it. There are a few moments that go too far with the silliness and humor, however, and the way the plot flows also feels very episodic. The Snyder Cut of Justice League was divided into 6 parts, with each part lasting around 30 to 45 minutes. This film has a lot of fade-to-black moments before going to the next plotline, and it feels like episodes of an HBO Max series edited as a movie. Also, the CGI can look a bit off at times, particularly when Superman is flying. The new version of Lex is fantastic. The other versions of Lex were a bit too camp, and his greatest plan was a real estate scam. This version feels like a legitimate threat, and though he can be a bit over the top at times, he's still a very hateable villain. Supes and Lois have great chemistry together, and of course the character that steals the show is Superman's dog, Krypto. This film is great at being fresh for today's audience, while also paying tribute to what came before. It can be a bit narratively all over the place, but it's still a triumph. Number 9, Thunderbolts. This is one of the most humid MCU films to date. While the franchise has long relied on quippy humor, sometimes to its detriment, Thunderbolts wisely dials it back. The humor that is present lands well and feels organic, never undercutting the emotional weight of the scenes. The cast absolutely sells it. Everyone has solid chemistry, and their performances add depth to characters that have often been sidelined or underserved in other MCU projects. The action is visceral and tightly choreographed, keeping things street level and gritty for much of the runtime. That grounded quality is part of what makes the first 2 acts so compelling. Unfortunately, that focus and restraint don't carry through to the third act. The film takes a hard turn into overblown spectacle, introducing a villain who feels wildly out of place. It would be like putting Thanos into the final episode of Daredevil. The total whiplash is jarring. The first 2 thirds of the movie are small scale and personal, and suddenly it's world-ending stakes with a dark Superman figure who's neither fresh nor compelling. It's a trope that has been run into the ground by now, and here it feels lazy rather than meaningful. It's a shame, because the rest of the movie is so strong. This mismatch between setup and payoff echoes a pattern we've seen in some of Marvel's Disney Plus shows. Solid build-up, followed by a finale that buckles under the weight of too much plot too fast. And honestly, Thunderbolts might have worked better as a Disney Plus series, whereas characters and conflicts could breathe more and build naturally toward the climax that matches the current tone. Despite its third act missteps, Thunderbolts is still a standout in the modern MCU landscape. It's mature, emotional, and refreshingly light on jokes. If not for the disappointing villain, this could have ranked among the MCU's very best. Number 8, Drop. Who would have thought you could make memes creepy? Drop is a highly original thriller that has excitement, mystery, a good message, and just a bit of humor sprinkled in for good measure. The main character is a woman who has gotten out of an abusive relationship, but still has trauma. The film has a commentary on abuse victims and overcoming abusive trauma. Despite its serious themes, the film also manages to sprinkle some light humor in on occasion to ease the tension. Characters like the main character's waiter provide some awkwardly funny dialogue. Because the film is a chamber piece, which is a film where the characters are in one location, the film is high tension and high stakes. The film's pacing never falters, and actually manages to get more exciting as it goes on. This, to me, felt like an Agatha Christie story set in modern day, and the film is scary because it's realistic. With almost everyone's addiction to social media and our phones, the film is plausible, and you feel like it could happen to you, which is why it's effective. That being said, at times the film does require you to suspend your disbelief, as there are a couple of plot conveniences and contrivances that exist to move the plot forward. But the main character is fantastically written. She's a woman who's willing to do anything to protect her kids and go full mama bear. It's an empowering movie. And I hope the movie inspires people who are in similar situations to finally speak out and get out. If this film can save just one life, it's worth it. This is a tight, well-paced, exciting thriller mystery. It's definitely worth checking out. Number 7, The Gorge. Apple TV has released a couple of their movies in theaters for limited runs. Spirited, Argyle, Fly Me to the Moon, and it's a shame that this is the one that went straight to streaming, because out of all the movies they've released, this one justifies going to theaters. The aesthetic and tone of it feel very much like the Maze Runner movies, but the premise is still original. And there's a reason that they released this movie on Valentine's Day. Yes, partly because it is a love story, but there's also a very specific reason involving one of the characters that ties to that date, but I won't spoil it. After the first 20 minutes of exposition, there's actually very little dialogue in the movie until about the last third. And this works well, because the film makes the two main leads build a relationship with each other without talking to each other. Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy have great chemistry. The film has intense action sequences, some edge-of-your-seat horror elements, a well-written, fleshed-out romance. Everyone can find something to enjoy about this movie. And if you don't have Apple TV, consider this film your excuse to get a free trial just to watch this movie. It's definitely worth checking out. Number 6, Looney Tunes, The Day the Earth Blew Up. The animation in this movie shows why Warner Brothers is one of the top animation studios. It's fluid and gorgeous. The visual gags and slapstick humor you expect from Looney Tunes are all here in this film. There are a few clever fourth wall breaks, one of which I think was one of the best jokes in the movie, and for the most part feels like classic Looney Tunes. Key phrase here being, for the most part. There are, unfortunately, a couple of times in the first act where it feels like the humor is trying too hard to appeal to Gen Z by being trendy, and it took me out of the film, because it no longer feels like the world of Looney Tunes in those scenes. Fortunately, those types of jokes are only in the first act, and they go by pretty quickly. The film is a fun buddy comedy, teaming up Porky Pig and Daffy Duck, who work well off each other with their dialogue and humor. The plot feels straight out of a cheesy 1950s sci-fi movie, mixed with a Futurama episode, with references to classic sci-fi such as Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The film has relatively good pacing, and a clever third act twist as well as payoff during Chekhov's gun. This is one of the best animated films of the year. Go see it, support 2D animation, it's great for kids and adults. Number 5, Night of the Zoopocalypse. This is one of the most creative animated films I've seen in a while. This film is a collaboration between Canada, France, and Belgium, and last year the country of Belgium won an Academy Award for Best Animated Film for the movie Flow. This film is basically, what if H.P. Lovecraft was kid-friendly? The film is sort of a mix of the Penguins of Madagascar TV show, Wallace and Gromit the Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and Five Nights at Freddy's. The way the zombie virus starts and is transmitted is wildly creative and different. I won't spoil how, but it's definitely done in a way that I've never seen before, and definitely not something you'd ever expect. Much like Monsters vs. Aliens, this is a kid-friendly throwback to the B-horror films of the 50s. The film is also pretty sophisticated. There's no trendy pop culture references, no misplaced pop songs, no innuendo, no profanity. The film is extremely, pleasantly family-friendly, though some kids may of course be a bit scared by the infected zoo animals. They did their best to make them look cute, but some sensitive kids might be upset. This was a fantastic film, kids and adults will enjoy it, and it's great for families. Number 4, The Legend of Ochi. This is a family film released by A24, something I never thought I'd say. And I hope the movie does well, because A24 needs to make more family movies, especially when they're this well done. This movie feels very much aligned with the family films of the 80s, specifically E.T., The Dark Crystal, and Labyrinth. If I hadn't seen Willem Dafoe and Finn Wolfhard in other movies, and you told me that this was some obscure movie from the 1980s that somehow got lost and then just recently found, I totally believe you. It's not 80s throwback in the sense that it has 80s references everywhere, or by the fact that it has Finn Wolfhard, because it actually feels like its own world, not tied to a specific time period, but at the same time, there's no modern technology. And I gotta praise practical effects in the movie. These are Jim Henson level impressive. The creature in this movie is sort of a mix of E.T., Grogu, and a Mogwai. He's adorable and funny. There's some good world building and lore around the creatures in the movie. Now, plot-wise, it does borrow very heavily from How to Train Your Dragon and E.T., but at the same time, it has enough of its own identity. I only have 2 real criticisms with the film. One, there is unfortunately some mild swearing that was unneeded, because the rest of the movie is really cute and sweet. And 2, as good as Willem Dafoe is, I don't know what was up with the accent he chose to do with this movie. Half the time, I couldn't understand what he was saying. I was surprised to see that the Russo brothers were executive producers on this. After the disaster that was the Electric State, this almost seems like an apology, because you can tell the people behind this really put a lot of thought, effort, heart, and passion into this. I wouldn't say this is a movie for super little kids, not because of any content concerns, simply because it probably won't hold their attention. I'd say the 10 and up crowd is perfect for this movie, and for someone who grew up with films like E.T., you'll probably enjoy it too. Number 3, Fantastic Four First Steps. Not only does it finally get the tone and character right, but refreshingly, it's an MCU project that does not require homework. And it's a reboot that doesn't retell the origin story again. It explains the origin, but it doesn't spend half the movie on it. It's more akin to the intro of the CW Arrowverse shows. And this film is set on alternate Earth, not the main MCU Earth, so it's not tied down to the other MCU projects and is given more free reign. Director Matt Shakman directed the WandaVision series, and this movie very much feels like the early episodes of that show that were pastiches of the 50s and 60s. The first 2 Fantastic Four movies were live-action cartoons in a bad way, but this is a live-action cartoon in the best way, mixed with old 50s and 60s sci-fi serials. It's one part The Jetsons, one part Lost in Space, and one part Flash Gordon. It knows it's campy and embraces it, while at the same time not going too far with it. And it's refreshing to see a superhero film where the heroes were revered, not feared. There's been a lot of nihilistic comic book properties where the heroes are feared and the government seeks to control and regulate them, but much like the Adam West Batman show, the authorities are cool with the heroes. Michael Giacchino does the score here, and his score is very reminiscent of his work on The Incredibles, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films, and Tomorrowland. Unlike the previous iterations of Fantastic Four, where the chemistry between the actors fell flat, these actors actually feel like a real family and work well with each other, with gentle loving ribbing and being willing to do anything for each other. This is one of the most human, emotional films as of late. My only real criticism is the pacing can drag in certain parts. Compared to the majority of the MCU, there's not as much action. There are scenes that I feel are over-explained and go on for a bit too long, so maybe the pacing could have been tightened a bit, but that's a nitpick. The film is still nothing short of fantastic. Our runner-up is Predator Badlands. This is a unique entry into the franchise, because not only is it the first standalone Predator movie to be PG-13, it's also the first standalone Predator movie that does not take place on Earth. As much as I like the other Predator movies, they all kind of feel the same. Same story beat, same third act. This one completely throws that out the window and twists the franchise in a new direction. A direction that I thought worked, but I can tell is going to be very divisive for longtime fans of the franchise. I know a lot of people are going to be turned away by the Predator being the protagonist of the movie, because when you think Predator, you think ruthless hunter that you root against, and here they make him a more sympathetic, emotional character. Again, I thought it worked, but I completely understand if that irks somebody. The main non-alien character played by Elle Fanning is a delightful character. She's like Ripley from the Alien movies if Ripley had a sense of humor. She's infectiously optimistic, while the Predator is pessimistic. And it works well, and provides some well-done humor. The humor in the movie is well-timed and works, as opposed to the 2018 Predator movie, where the humor was forced and lowbrow. However, I thought the setup, as fresh to the franchise as it wasn't totally original either. Of course, the main character is a misfit outcast needing to prove himself. Of course, there's a MacGuffin that he needs to find to restore his honor. And of course, there's an enemies to friends arc. It's familiar, but it also works. Now, does the controversial PG-13 rating hurt the movie? I didn't think so. I didn't watch this movie and think, I wish this movie were more violent and brutal. In fact, I think compared to a lot of other PG-13 movies, this is pretty tame. I've talked many times about how I found Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness too violent, specifically the scene where Wanda murders a bunch of superheroes in excessively graphically violent ways, and how it really put me off the movie. This has just the right amount. The blood in the movie is alien blood. I'd say the violence level is about the same as Alita Battle Angel or The Mandalorian. It's a movie very much aimed at the teenage crowd, but I think it's also accessible enough for longtime fans of the franchise who look past the PG-13 rating and give it a chance. There's only one curse word in the entire movie, and it's a tame one, which again, is more than I can say for a lot of comic book movies over the last 10 years, even the PG-13 ones. The action is well done, the story feels fresh to the world of these movies, and the character is well written. I'd recommend watching the first Predator movie and the first 2 Alien movies. They're not required viewing, but you'll definitely get more out of this when certain callbacks happen. They're quick enough that you won't be confused if this is your first movie in this universe, but you'll get a grin on your face if you do understand. And the number 1 movie of 2025 is Sketch. This completely caught me off guard in the best way possible. When you hear Angel Studios, you might immediately think of overly faith-based or religious films, and for good reason. That's largely been their reputation up until now. But Sketch is different. While it's certainly family-friendly, it's not heavy-handed with the religious messaging. In fact, it doesn't really lean into any specific religious themes at all. Instead, it's a wildly accessible, emotionally rich, and creatively daring film that just about anyone can enjoy. What surprised me most was the tone. This is technically a family movie, but it's got a real edge to it. The kind of edge you'd find in Goosebumps or classic 80s kids films. You know, the kind of movies Steven Spielberg used to make, ones that weren't afraid to push the emotional boundaries of the younger audience. Sketch taps into that exact energy. It has moments that are genuinely intense, even a little creepy, but it always knows its limits. It walks the fine line of being scary enough to thrill without being traumatizing. Think of it like the Babadook if it were PG, and blended with the quirky horror of a Doctor Who episode, specifically the one with the girl whose drugs come to life. That's basically Sketch. And speaking of drugs, the visual effects are incredibly well done. The way the hand-drawn creatures integrate with the live-action footage is seamless and imaginative. Some of the drugs are like twisted, evil versions of Pokemon, equal parts fascinating and unsettling. It's a brilliant creative concept brought to life with care and flair. Performance-wise, the film delivers across the board. Tony Hale is excellent, bringing the kind of grounded emotional weight that really anchors the story. But the real revelation is the cast of child actors, who give some of the most believable and heartfelt performances I've seen this year. Like a true Spielbergian adventure, the film's emotional core is deeply tied to themes of grief, loss, and healing. These heavier elements are handled with sensitivity and nuance, never feeling out of place even amid the fantastical premise. But Sketch isn't all darkness and tension. It's also funny, warm, and heartfelt. There's real humor here, some of it whimsical, some of it character-driven, and at its heart, it's a story about connection, creativity, and resilience. It's one of those rare movies that successfully juggles scares, laughs, and emotional depth without compromising any of them. In a year that was full of sequels, reboots, and formulaic blockbusters, Sketch stands out as something truly original. It's bold, it's imaginative, it's emotionally resonant, and most of all, it's fun. I honestly can't recommend it highly enough, and it's my favorite movie of the year 2025. You should share your ranking of the top 10 movies of 2025, and I'll see you next time.